When a country gains independence, it needs more than a new flag. It needs a new way to tell its story. This is the heart of post-colonial literature, a global movement of writers from nations once controlled by European empires, all working to reclaim their narrative. Think of the Western literary canon, Shakespeare, Dickens, Austen. For centuries, these were the great books. Post-colonial writers engage in what's called writing back. They take these classics and flip the script. Jean Rhys's Wide Sargasso Sea doesn't just retell Jane Eyre. It gives a name, a history, and a voice to the so-called mad woman in the attic, showing her not as a monster, but as a victim of colonial displacement. Similarly, Chinua Achebe's Things Fall Apart dismantles the European myth of a primitive Africa by revealing the complex Igbo society that existed long before the British arrived. This reclamation extends to identity itself. Many characters exist in a state of hybridity, what theorist Homi Bhabha calls the third space. They aren't just one thing or the other. They're a complex blend of cultures, wearing a Western suit but following traditional laws. Within this space, they might use mimicry, adopting the colonizer's dress and language. Bhabha called it almost the same, but not quite. It can be a tool for survival, but also a subtle act of mockery, revealing the absurdity of colonial authority. Even the choice of language is a battlefield. Should a writer use English, the language of the oppressor, to reach a global audience, or their native tongue to decolonize the mind? Some, like Salman Rushdie, find a third way, chutneyfying English, mixing it with local rhythms and slang to forge something entirely new. Ultimately, this literature is about agency. It seeks out the most marginalized, the subaltern, those without a voice in the system, and gives them the power to finally speak. These aren't secondary stories. They are the most urgent part of our modern global conversation.